Right, in this video I'm going to go ahead and explain to you guys a little bit about how to do your own paint job in your car. I've done several over the years. I was a painter in a body shop many years ago. But when you paint your car at home, you have a completely different set of rules that you need to be following. This is kind of dirty because it sat outside overnight, and there's this stuff on here. But it's all polished up, and could use one more buff, but it's pretty much done. And this was done very quickly. This was not tried to make a really custom show car or anything like that. Just went over it really quick, and did some fender crafting and stuff like that, and then went ahead and painted it. So I don't anymore do stuff like a 10 out of 10 paint job. I know how to do it. It just takes about 10 times as long as getting it from this to that, which is just a nice looking car. So anyway, I'm going to explain all this stuff to you, and later on in the video we're going to have a complete demo. While I'm doing the demo, I'm going to do a narration along with that will kind of help you while I'm in. I have a blow-up spray booth. It's basically like a jumpy that the kids go into, but it's a spray booth, and they sell those on Amazon, eBay. You can buy one of those if you're interested. I'll put maybe a link in the video, and you can check that out. They're not that expensive, and they work really good. Maybe you're looking for a good primer. This is a really good primer. It's actually DT, direct to rust even. You can put it over mild surface rust, and it will actually encapsulate it for many years. So it's actually a really good surfacer primer. It's always nice to know those products. This is a really cheap base coat if you are on a real tight budget. Spend your money in your clear. I'm going to say there's a lot better base coats, but this one's cheap. Always use real urethane reducer. Do not use lacquer thinner for your base coat ever, or acetone. You're going to have problems. This is an excellent clear coat. It's a 2-to-1. That's what you're looking for in your clear, and they have some good 4-to-1s as well, but this is a 2-to-1. You can order this online. Tamco, I think it's tamcopaint.com. They have actually good base coat too, and it's fairly inexpensive. Here's another good clear brand, Capsi. It's pretty inexpensive. This is just a reducer. I don't have the clear. The clear number would be 6030. If you're in the AQMD area, I don't know if it's VOC compliant, but they have that available on. You can find it on the internet. Just look up 6030 Capsi, and that's a good clear 2-to-1. I don't have any of the clear on hand, but this brand Chameleon has a nice 2-to-1 clear. They do have it VOC compliant for California. That's pretty good, and they also have some 50 state stuff that's really good, or 49 state stuff that's really good, and they have up to 60% solids. Really good clear. And again, all these are very inexpensive. I mean, you can go to premium brands like Glasserit, DBU, whatever. I don't know the numbers anymore because I don't buy them. They're too expensive. Deltron DBU clears. They're by PPG, and you'll spend $400 to $800. And basically, this is Tamco clear. It's about the same quality as a $800 clear from what's it called, Glasserit. There's also a little bit in it less expensive one from Transtar called Transtar E3. Does a great finish, lays down really smooth. You can get a really nice polish out of it. It really, visually, you won't see the difference in all of those products. So real quick, a little bit about me. I was a painter back in the 80s and early 90s before they had to change spray gun changes. I had to learn how to respray with the newer guns. And it is very different when you do your own paint job at home than it is working in a spray booth. So there's going to be guys that are going to be spray guys watching this video that work in a shop that are not going to agree with some of the stuff that I do or some of the things that I say. And that's cool because they're in a completely different environment. And when you have a controlled temperature spray booth, and when you're done, you can 10 minutes after, you can push that bake button. It's got a tip, and you've got the same temperature products and same temperature every time you go in. using the same stuff every time. It's repetitive and it's much easier. But when you're at home, you're going to make some mistakes, and you make up for those mistakes with color sanded buff. So, but you really want to get it as close as you can to smooth, because if you're on a really steep vertical surface, like if you're on this VW bus here, for example, this is so flat that if you have a little bit of orange peel in it, you may not be able to color sand and buff all of that out. Heavy orange peel on a VW bus is really hard to get out of the paint. So because it's so flat that even if it's just a little bit of orange peel, it'll start to it'll still be there even if you're starting with 600. If you're doing your own paint job, you've never done it before, I would recommend using at least 3 coats of clear. I would say 3, not 4, that's too many, but 3 coats of clear, of good high solids clear, and plan on doing a little more sanding. I usually can do it in 2. Most painters can do it in 2 coats. If you can put it on wet enough, that first coat, without running, that's kind of the trick to get doing it in 2. But a lot of guys, like this car was a inexpensive base coat. Actually, it was free, so, but it's not really a car paint base coat, so it's got some modeling in it. It's got some issues as far as that goes, but it looks really nice. And when it's got wheels on it and it's assembled, it'll look really nice, a nice looking car. Never look at your paint when you're all done and think that it looks bad, because once you put all the moldings and everything on it, like when this car gets completely assembled, it'll end up looking really, really nice, and a lot of those things will be hidden with molding and trim. So think about that stuff when you're doing your body work. So you can cheat a little bit on your base coat, save a few bucks. You know, it is more difficult. It does take more time. So a lot of guys that are painters are going to say, no, use a good base coat. Well, that's true. You know, there is a difference. But one thing never cheat on is get a really good clear. One of those clears that I'm talking about, they will lay down really nice. You will get a good finish. You can color sand and buff them really shiny and make up for a lot of your mistakes in the cut and buff. But real quick, I'm just going to kind of go over some of the good base coats that are inexpensive, a little bit less expensive. Of course, we all know Glacerate's really good clear, really good base coat, really good clear. We all know that you know, PPG DBU is really good stuff, you know, but when you get their Omni product, I don't really like it. It's not very good. It's cheap. It doesn't go on very nice. It's got a lot of binder in it. The ones that are good, that are inexpensive, they're ones probably you never heard of. Some of them are cheaper. One's Matrix is really good. Some guys like the Valspar. I do not like the Valspar stuff. It just doesn't work for me. To me, if it's, you know, $20 difference or $50 difference in a gallon, I'd rather just buy one of these other ones. Another one that's really good is called Auto Art. They're made, basically, it's up there with Glacerate and some of the others. It's very inexpensive, or pretty inexpensive. It's still pricey, but their clear is pretty expensive. So but the base coats are fairly reasonable. You can get one that's 100%, no binder in it. They have another one, the Matrix. Like I said, I don't know if I said Matrix. I'm trying to think of the other ones. Of course, if you can get Lessenol, that's pretty good. Your really good ones are things like Sickens, and then the AkzoNobel has a cheaper product called Lessenol, really good. That one's actually really good for the price. There's another one, I'm trying to think. Species Hecker is a really good base coat. Then again, these can be more expensive. And the reason the BASF, like the stuff that's like Glacerate and the PPG products are so expensive is because they do warranty stuff for these shops, and a lot of them have contracts with them, and so the insurance and stuff like that, I don't know exactly how that all works, but it all works together. So that's why your DIY guy at home, you're better off buying one of the other products. And also Tamco has another inexpensive, well, it's fairly inexpensive base coat. Seems like it's gotten up a little bit more in price lately, so that's why I'm talking about some of these other products. So anyway, that's kind of the paint and stuff that you can get that are decent. that you can get a decent finish with. Again, like I said, if you cheat, the best thing to cheat on is your base coat. If you have issues with it, you can always stop. You're at home. You're not like in a booth where you have to keep going. You got 6 other cars waiting, to get spot repair work. So that's why they really want the best products for those things. And you can stop, and if you have fish eyes, stop and sand them out. Sand the car down again, scuff it up, and make sure you got adhesion, working for you. And make sure you use a good reducer. Don't use the cheap stuff. You get a cheap junk reducer, like using lacquer thinner or using acetone. You're asking for problems. And there's some reducers that are really cheap. Tamco has a really good reducer that's very inexpensive. You can order that from them. If you order the clear, you just order some reducer if you're going to use a different base. So a couple pieces of advice to start, and then now we're going to go ahead and move into that tutorial. I'm going to be spraying the car, and we'll be talking as we go. All right, so this is going to be a little bit of a long video, but it's okay if you guys are first timers. It's going to really help you figure out a few things. So I thought I'd just put this in here about spray guns. If you're looking for a cheap, inexpensive spray gun, they always have the $10 Harbor Freight one. It'll get the job done, but you're going to have a lot more work in the end. And you may end up with some dry spots or have to overturn the air pressure above what the recommended settings are. It's really best if you start off with a better spray gun, and if you're painting like a VW bus, you want a really good one. I'm going to tell you one that I don't have here that they have in the UK. I've watched a few guys spray with it, and I've seen their reviews. The guys are really good spray guys. It's called a DeVilbiss FLG-5. It's only available in the UK, Australia. Okay, so don't just buy the FLG. It's not the same. It has to be the FLG-5. That spray gun, you could spray a really nice coat of clear with it, and it is the least expensive way to get a fine finish for like a VW bus. Here's some other options that are cheap, except for this one. This is the Techna Pro Light. This is about $450 to $500. I can't remember how much I paid. It was like $450 back then. Now I think they're about $500 something now. But if you look here at the air cap, look at all the holes in there. Let me get you up closer so you can see. Oh darn, it's the wrong button. All those holes in there. That's a lot of air goes through this air cap. The thing that's nice about this gun is a premium gun. Advantages are it can spray really fine spray. I mean, it comes with 3 air caps. You get the 1.2, the 1.3, and the 1.4 spray heads. You also end up with this air cap is the 1 point, or the TE10 and TE20. Those are the best ones. To use this gun, you're going to need a lot of air. You need at least a 5 horsepower, 60 gallon. You're probably not going to be able to turn it up full pressure. In fact, I know you're not going to be able to turn it up full pressure because you'll have a giant cloud. If you're painting in the garage at home, you're going to have to run it about 16, 17 pounds. So you'll lose a lot with that as far as the fineness of the spray, but it's still way finer than even these other guns at that pressure. Like I said, if you're in a booth, you can run the sucker right up to 28 pounds and be happy as a lark. One of the cheaper options is this one from Harbor Freight Tools. It's a Harbor Freight Spectrum. They're about $1.50, about 150 bucks. I think the FLG-5 is a better gun, and you can get it for about $200, I think, US dollars. If you're in the US and UK, they're like 90 quid, a lot less money over there. But when you have somebody ship it over here, it's going to cost you about near $200. So this is about 150. So this is a 1.3 HTE. That's the best one for lower air use. So if you're at home and you only got 3.5 horsepower or something compressor, this will probably still work okay. It's almost like the HTE is almost like using a A low volume, no pressure spray gun. Those I found, they don't work that great. I have a SATA copy, and I'm not going to say to use that. This is another cheap Harbor Freight gun. They're like 70 bucks or something like that. This one was like 100 when I bought it. It was like $99. I should look for the sale. I think they're coming down to 129 every once in a while. But this is a this is the Pro line spray gun. The issue with these, and I want to show you this because if you buy a cheap gun, this is what you really want to look for. You see how this is tapered here, and it's tapered in the cap. That's part of the way that it distributes the air. I don't know, or it seals there or something, and you always end up with issues. And see how this has finer threads on here, really fine threads on there. Let's get you up really close. There's really fine threads here. These two have coarser threads, so easier to clean. You're constantly spending all your time cleaning with this gun. It actually does a pretty good spray when it's new, but after you use it, I don't know, half a dozen times or more, you know, with all the work you're doing to try and keep it clean and everything else. This one, I can leave this thing out. See how dirty this gun is? This thing will spray beautiful with it dirty and everything. It doesn't care. Same thing. The Tech-9 I keep a little cleaner, but I don't really have a place to really do a great job of cleaning them. I have to use a 2-gallon bucket like this and just throw it in there and try and clean it up every once in a while. And it's not like a very good system to clean them. So I paint a lot of stuff. So anyway, those are some gun options. You know, a premium gun's going to get you a better finish. You know, this is the least expensive premium gun. The FLG-5 is the least expensive, close to one of these premium gun that you can buy. Anything else I don't know anything about. So anyway, just a few to show you. That might help you if you're looking for a good gun. I mean, this one's a great starter gun, really. You could even just use this for base coat, and then eventually you get yourself FLG-5 and use it for clear, or get yourself a Tech-9 and use it for clear. If you got a lot of air volume, you're going to use a lot of air volume with this gun. This gun uses at least 17 CFM. This one will spray with like less than 10. You know, these two, I think both these will. Alright, so in the other video I did a review on this spray gun. I have a review on the Harbor Freight Spectrum. Really not a bad gun, and that's what I'm using in this video to show basically that you can do a good paint job with a fairly inexpensive gun. I could have done this with the $10 Harbor Freight, but honestly it would have had a little more orange peel in it. It would have been a little bit more work. Probably would have had a little bit of trouble spraying that thick high solids clear with it. It would have been really slow. Might end up with some dry spots. So this Harbor Freight, this one, if you notice, the fan is quite big on it. So on the Techna Pro Light, the fan is much bigger than this. I used the Techna Pro Light on the single cab that you may have saw for a second or two in the video, the orange one. And I did that because I need to be quite a bit quicker. I was going to actually do this for that, but I decided to use this video footage for tutorial for this type of thing. This video footage is in a couple of different of my videos, so I thought it was a good example. So if you notice on the base coat, which I'm spraying right now, if you notice I'm overlapping 50%. And the reason you do that is because the top and the bottom of your fan do not cover as well. So when you do that first stroke, if you notice when I just did that, you'll see that I ran the fan through the middle at the bottom of that molding. And that's because the bottom of the edge of the fan, if I started with that, it would actually be dry along that bottom edge. So the top and the bottom are Actually, the top and the bottom of the fan are a little bit thinner material, and the middle of the fan has a little bit more of a coverage. So that's why you always overlap 50% or more. So you can overlap more, but you have to go faster. So you're not trying to connect all the dots. You're just trying to get them on when you're doing that. And then you don't. So generally when you're spraying, you're kind of connecting all the little particulates that come out of the gun. And on your first coat, you might not quite be doing that, depending on the material. And overlapping half, or like I said, you can go like 90% in, overlap, and then or 50% or 75% or to 90% overlap, and you can actually you can spray it on completely kind of dry to where it's not connecting, and then if you do that, you'll see that they'll start to, by the time you get over at 90%, 80%, whatever, 70%, you start to see that it starts to, the dots are all connected, but you're getting more dots per square inch. So on clear coat, they say to go 75%. So you can go 75% or more. And like I said, if you're doing that, you're not going to be connecting the dots when you're going across. You're going to be watching them connect at the very end, especially on your first coat of clear. So generally, when I'm spraying clear coat, I am connecting my dots, okay, on the second coat, and I have the pressure up high enough to where with this gun I can do that, to where they touch each other and just smash just a little bit on that last coat. And what that does is that lets it lay down a little bit smoother, gets that nice glass finish. So that's a little bit about how you do it. It takes a lot of practice. You got to spray a lot of times. I've sprayed a lot of cars. I paint in the sign industry, so it's similar. If you notice, I just checked my pot. One of the things you always do when you paint is if you feel your gun getting light, you want to check your pot and figure out where you're going to run out at, and make sure that you don't run out. Because if you run out in the middle of a panel, sometimes that can be a problem. Because when you go to, you're constantly should know where that pot is, how light the gun's getting. You can always feel it, and then stop instead of running out. Stop at a place where you know where you're at, where you can finish something. So always keep an eye on that pot. That's what I was doing just right there. I opened up the lid, looked at it, make sure I put it back on tight. I've seen that so many times. That's why a lot of times I'll use, like when I'm using my Techno Pro light, I'll use a transparent pot, and it has it's the disposable, so that I can turn it completely upside down and it won't leak. Where this pot on these cheaper guns, you got to watch that lid and make sure it's on straight. You'll get it crooked once, and hopefully that only happens once, but I've done it a couple times when I'm just spraying the parts or something. The pot leak. In fact, it did leak on this. On the first coat, if you didn't notice, the fender has a little drip. This one I was using air to blow it off. So, and the drip's still noticeable. I actually forgot to clean it up. I thought it had gotten it. And usually what I'll do is at the last coat of base, I'll do something called a drop coat. And or drop or control coat. Some guys call it control coat. We used to just call it dust it. And what we do is the last coat, so this is the second coat here. The last coat is what you'll see is me do is I'll go, instead of being 6 to 8 inches away, somewhere in there, maybe 10, 6 to 8 or 10, I'll go to 12 to 16 inches, depends on the material. On this one, I want it to be around 12 inches, because this is a sign industry single stage urethane I'm shooting on as a base coat, and it was free. That's why I used it. And if you notice, it's about getting the speed right, just even speed. And where I'm at on this gun is I'm like at 2.5 turns out, so I'm actually painting very slowly. I used to paint quite a bit faster than this, and as I got older, my body just doesn't want to do that, and so I would normally maybe take this gun up and probably, well, probably 3 turns out, maybe on the first coat. Go to 3.5 on the second of base, and go quite a bit faster. But part of the reason is this booth is very narrow, and it's hard to actually paint inside this. It's not that bad, but it's a lot better than a garage, because at least in the garage, if you paint in there, everything's going to be covered in overspray. Even if you use plastic or whatever, all your stuff in there is going to be covered in overspray. When I was younger, I dealt with all that stuff all the time. Didn't really care much, but I don't know. Now it's just much easier just to contain it in this little blow-up building. That's about all it does. You still end up with some dust in it. You still end up with, there is some airflow in there, and you can't zip that thing shut, the door shut, and then it'll go through the filters. But, going in and out of that zipper all the time, unless you have all your material all set up inside there, it just, I just don't like it. I like leaving the door shut, because trying to go in and out of that zipper, it's really a pain. Even I remember back in the booth days when you shut the door in the booth, and then, and then all this dust would, come out of the filters. You had to be really careful when you open that door to the booth, every time you went in and out of there. The newer ones have, I think, a better system. Maybe the fans slow down slowly. Our old one went, and you'd just be done. So basically the difference between spraying in a booth and spraying at home is the airflow will take away your overspray. And when you're at home, and even with this booth, I get a little bit of help from this thing, ventilating properly. But when you're in a spray booth, your overspray will go right out the filters. Versus when you're at home, what happens is when you start spraying, even if you've got a lot of fans, and if you have a bunch of fans, you have too many fans, you're going to be, your neighbor's cars are going to have overspray on them, just so you know. So a lot of times over ventilating it in your house is not a good idea. You want it to ventilate kind of slowly, because you don't want to wipe out people's cars or your own cars, because it will travel quite a ways. So I always make sure, that I'm spraying at an opportune time, and make sure that my neighbors are all happy, and that, and I don't do that much. So anyway, if you're painting a lot of times at home, just get a shop or whatever, and doing cars for somebody else. But so the whole idea is a compromise. Is compromise in finish. You're not going to get the same finish as you do in a shop. So the idea is to get as least amount of blemishes in your job without making a lot of problems for other people. So because you're just doing your own car. It's one little thing you're doing, whatever, restoration or whatever, and there shouldn't be any reason why you should be able to make other people upset doing that. So you're going to lose some quality finish by doing it at home, by running a little bit lower air pressure. And with this gun, I'm running this one at 28 pounds, and it doesn't make a lot of overspray. And I'm at 28 pounds, and I was at, I think, 2.5 to 3 turns out when I got to the clear. Opened it up a little bit. I don't remember. I usually open it like 2 turns, and then I'll spray a little bit, and I'll go another quarter turn, spray a little bit until it's right where I want it to be. And so I don't know exactly how far that is. I don't always measure the turns out. But on the clear, I think I was close to 3 turns out, 2.5 turns out, something like that, somewhere in there. This is the basic. I believe this is I think this is the control coat. I'm going a little bit further away. My control coat is for metallics. You don't need to do this with single, just a regular solid color. What I'm doing is I'm spraying further away, and that's a cross sprayed dust. So sometimes I'll do that, and go further away and go a lot faster and have the paint a lot thinner. So I'll reduce the paint and then I'll stand back further and I'll go a lot faster, going about almost twice the speed. It's hard to notice in the video, but and then I'm overlapping still the same, and I'm just putting on a lighter coat. And what that does is that kind of gets the metallics to stand up a certain way so that they'll be more even. Now generally, I will do that control coat twice. When you DIY at home, it's always a good idea to do it twice. This time I did it once, and again, it was a compromise. It was like, okay, that's going to take me another 20 minutes. Then because this is a single stage urethane finish that I had to catalyze, that it takes a little longer for it to dry. I was worried about, possibly the wind coming up and taking down my building or something like that. So I thought, well, it looked pretty good with one. There was some blemishes because of that, but again, if I would have done one more, they probably would have taken everything out of it and got it a little more even. But that's that control coat thing. Sometimes you'll do it once, sometimes you'll do it twice. You just got to look at it. The lighting wasn't very good this day. It was kind of foggy out. I was also painting in about 50 degrees, and all I had was medium hardener for the clear. I did catalyzed, and this is a catalyzed base coat. So I actually shot this with accelerator so that it would dry faster. I was going to accelerate the clear, but I was a little bit worried that it would be the clear I use typically likes, it dries a little bit slower or a little bit faster than it should. So I was thinking it might, on a medium hardener, it still might be okay, and I didn't want to have it dry out too fast and then have too many dry spots in it. So yeah, it did, because of that, it picked up a couple of runs, which is again what you're going to have at home versus a guy in a spray booth. He has the controlled temperature. A lot of them do, and I mean, we didn't have controlled temperature booths, but I was in California where you didn't really need them. The temperature was always between 70 and 80, and so we were never in extreme cold or extreme heat. But a lot of it is still nice to have those controlled temperature booths, because they, you can spray at exactly the same temperature all the time. When everything's the same all the time, all it is just you. Then you're with your spray gun. Again, I stopped and I shot the roof again because I wasn't sure with those columns if that was shadows I was looking at or stripes. A little bit of stripes still in it. I could have gotten out another drop coat. If you shoot that second coat of drop coat too early too, it'll just kind of melt in and it won't really stand it up really good. So you got to let it dry with this stuff. It's not like regular base coat where you just keep going and going and going until you're done. So if you don't notice, every time I change scenes like this, that means that was probably, an hour or half an hour of time. So I'm in the clear now. I mean, it was a good solid half hour or more between the base and the clear, because I had to wait for that to actually set up enough to where it wouldn't wrinkle going over it, but not too long to where I'd start having wrinkles from that if it was too dry with the catalyzed base coat. But it just has a hair of stickiness, so I could go a little bit heavier on this thing, and on the first coat than I would if I was going over base coat, because base coat's completely dry and smooth, and this was a little bit sticky, just a tiny bit. So you could actually put a little bit heavier coat on over this paint. So, but again, there's flaws in it because of what it is. It's not like I did get it down to where it was pretty smooth. There wasn't much for orange peel in it, but it did have a lot of dye back, and it wasn't because of the clear. If you use good clear, it usually doesn't dye back. And this was Tamco clear. I've done this clear before, and it doesn't dye back. Very little, if anything, if you do all your prep right. But since I was using the catalyzed base coat, the base coat shrinks a lot, so it took the clear with it, and it kind of shrinks down and doesn't look quite as smooth. It doesn't look as shiny. It looks almost the same smoothness, but a little bit, you get a little bit of, not, it's, I don't know, when it shrinks, it just does a little bit to the finish, not quite, that's why it's not quite as shiny. If you look at it really close and you sand it, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But anyway, so the first coat of clear you put on like a medium wet, and I'm going 75% overlap. I'm not doing 50% anymore. I'm going 75%. If you notice, I'm going a little slower. I think I have the settings a little bit tighter on the first coat. So instead of going 3 turns out, I'm at like a 2 3/4, something like that. And I'm going 75%. I'm going a little bit slower, and I'm overlapping 75%. So it's, that's basically you're putting on the clear a little bit slower, and I'm going a little bit slower than probably you would over base. If you're using regular base, you'd probably have to go just a little bit faster, or you're going to get some runs. So if you go too heavy on that first coat, it won't quite. It's not going to go. If you go too heavy, you're gonna or your droplets are too big. So the purpose, the whole idea of shooting clear without getting any orange peel is to have finer droplets and have them put down evenly. It's not necessarily how heavy it is. It's part of it is the heaviness. I mean, you have to put it on pretty good for it for those droplets to kind of smash just a little bit together on that second coat, so that they kind of flow out to a nice even finish. But if your spray gun's crap, or or you don't have your air pressure up high enough, then what happens is those droplets are too big, and when they connect together, you end up with orange peel. So that's kind of the process a little bit, and the rest is a little bit of practice. So, but and your distance. So some people, I watched some guys spray too far away. So if let's say you're way too far away, what happens is the droplets start to, as they hit the air, sometimes they will start to dry a little bit before they hit the surface if you're too far away. So let's say you're 12 or 14 inches away and you're trying to spray your clear coat, and you're going, man, I keep on getting orange peel, or I get dryness. It's because you're too far away. So it's all about consistency. You need to be doing exactly the same distance, exactly the same speed, exactly the same everything, almost like a machine, and then you can spray that clear on really even and have a good gun that breaks it up nice and fine. And like I said, this gun can do that pretty well, not too bad. It's not a great gun. Like I said, it's definitely not the same as the FLG5. I'm not sure if I think the reason why they don't sell the FLG5 here in the US is because it probably hasn't been tested for HVLP or HTE, and that costs money, so they probably haven't tested it. But from the looks of it in the booth, I'm sure that I've watched it, and it really just doesn't waste any material. It's very, very it comes off that gun and just goes right on the panel. So to me, it's probably worthy of passing, but they just don't want to pay the money to do it because it's a cheaper gun, and they'd rather have us spend more money on it. So that's probably why it's not available in the U.S., especially in California. Getting the TE20 to pass inspection took years. They had only the HVLP for a long time, and I was using that, and then I went to the TE20 because they actually it sprays a little bit finer, but it still meets HVLP requirement, which I forget what the limits are, 65%, I'm pretty sure, something like that, 65% transfer efficiency. And that's what HTE is too. It still meets it, but the HTE is supposed to use a little bit less air. So that's why this gun is HVLP approved, but it's considered an HTE because I guess it uses a bit less air or something like that. I'm not sure all the guidelines and all that. But so your overlap is 75% on your clear, you know, just to try and stay like a machine. I am boxed in like really tight there. That's why I didn't have my spray wide open. And also partly because, again, you could see the cloud building up. By the time I'm done with this coat, it is just full. You can see pretty well, but I've been in the garage with it open that much, and even with the fan on and everything, it's like you can't see a damn thing. It's like serious fog, you know. And then you go to do your next coat, and it's still in there. So the booth does move the air. This, you know, this makeshift booth thing does move the air a little bit. You know, it does help. So these are actually pretty good to do DIY. You know, and you're hidden. You know, you're inside this thing. You know, nobody knows what's going on in there. Another thing when you're at home is you need to be worried about what hardener you have. If your hardener is medium or slow. If you get too slow of a hardener, you know, that's when you're going to have some runs. You want that hardener to flash off, you know, right as you're done. You know, not too long. You want it to start to set like 10 minutes after. Now, off the camera, after I was done, you know, I walk around the car. I want it to dry just about 10 or 15 minutes before it starts to flash off on me. And I was able to, but it was a little bit longer than that. It was a little too long. It was like almost an hour for it to really start to flash off. So, because it was, again, it was like 50 degrees and I had medium hardener. So 55, 60 degrees, not even, maybe 60 by the time the end of the day came. Mediums for like 70 to 75 or something like that. So when I got to the end, you know, I was able to walk around and I start looking for runs and sags and things like that. And with a metallic, you got to be really careful. Sometimes you'll smear the base when you go to pull it off, but I didn't with this. So I just took a piece of 3/4 inch tape, made a little loop between two fingers, and then I go up and I dab it on the heavy areas and kind of pull them back off, and then spray a little bit over them to kind of blend them back in a little bit so they kind of flow out. Sometimes you can kind of paint underneath the run and have it kind of flow down a little bit, you know, like fade down and let the run kind of settle into the what's below it, and kind of work those things out. And because you're, you know, the whole idea is it's almost better to have a couple of runs in your paint job, and you can scratch them off easily. You know, I do that in a lot of my videos. You can scratch off those runs, and you know, I did the polishing on this. I showed that. So you can scratch those off and then go back and just polish it. You know, color sand and buff it. But when you have a bunch of orange peel that's real heavy, it takes a lot of time to sand all that orange peel out, especially if you're doing it by hand. You know, I always color sand and buff with a DA with 2000 grit, and you know, some guys have issues doing that. But that's the only way I do it. My arms and shoulders are bad because I'm older. You know, I'm 57 years old, and so that's why I'm spraying really slow, and that's why I set my gun settings down. You know, versus, like I said, some of the younger guys. When I was younger, I was more like that. I would spray a lot faster. I'd open up my spray gun more, and you know, and spray a lot faster. When I'm in the booth, when I was younger, you know, I would turn up my air pressure. Back then it was 60 pounds. We'd just go up to 60 and just crank everything wide open and just go, you know, almost. You do a spray pattern test, because back then if you had too wide of a fan, you'd have a void in the middle. It's kind of like the Iwata Supernova does now. Some guys use that gun. That's a really good gun, but it's very expensive. And that kind of works like the old guns, and that's why a lot of the old school guys like the Supernova, because it sprays more similar to the old 60-pound guns as far as, you know, settings and stuff like that. So that's why a lot of guys like it. And you gotta narrow the fan up quite a bit on that one, like the old guns you used to have to. You have to narrow the fan up because they had a void when you sprayed a test. It had a void right in the center of the fan. So if you had it all the way open, so you close it down until that void's gone. That's the way you do it. So that's why you usually have to spray a test pattern before you start. I don't. Well, on this thing, I didn't spray a test pattern at all because I know right where to set the gun and how it should spray. And when I spray it on the panel, I don't have masking paper sitting around that I can just go do tests on. I should do it, but I don't know. After a while, you kind of get to that point where you don't do that stuff anymore. And I know right when I start to spray, it's right what it's doing. I'll just start tweaking it. That's usually starting a low part like this, so that if I have something go wrong, it's down low in the panel. It's easy to fix. If I was spraying in a booth every day and I was doing this for a living, I would probably do test panels on everything, because you don't want to buff it. When you're at home, you're going to. When you're at the shop, you're trying to get it to come off that gun perfect, and and get onto the next car, because when we were doing body and paint, we were doing 6, 7, 8 spots a day, and you just didn't have time to polish them all. So you'd have to look at them and, polish a couple areas on it and get on to the next one if you had to. And then the body man would put it together, and that was it. Customer would come pick it up. Sometimes they'd come pick it up and they'd want you to fix something else, and fix it real quick, do whatever you had to do, and get it out of there. You got six more that day. So it was pretty crazy when it was busy, and then some days it was slow. It'd slow down, and back then I would go from my shop to another shop and go catch some other shop up really good. But yeah, I painted for a while. I did a lot of stripes, graphics, flames, scallops, you name it. I've done all of those types of things, and it doesn't make me any better of a painter. It just, factually, it makes me better at repairing my problems, because I think with that type of work, you end up with more issues versus when you're, just a hoser in the body shop and you're just putting it down every day. It's pretty repetitive. I really didn't like it. I mean, it's one of the reasons I got out of it. There was a lot of stuff that I didn't like about it. And it just seemed like, I was just going to be a donkey breathing chemicals every day. And I was like, nah, I think I'm going to do something else. And I'm just going to go do something. There's got to be another way to make money. And I just could see that there was a lot of problems coming in the future with, spray guns were changing, and all the stuff I'd learned and gotten really good at, I was going to do all over again. And I was like, this just isn't really worth it. And I'm just going to do something else. And I got back into, at some point, started painting houses. And then I started doing, I was a mechanic for a while. I was an ASE Master Auto Technician for a while. I learned mechanics and body and paint in high school and college, and then worked in the trades, both trades, until I was about 26, 27 years old. And I just realized, this is not the way to make money, and nobody appreciates you, and there's just no, and when I was painting houses and buildings, I'm appreciated every time, and I make more money. So why the heck would I want to do that? So if you notice, I'm spraying very much slower on the second coat. Really, that's when I'm hitting those dots are touching each other, and they're smashing just a hair. If you do too much, it's going to puddle and it's going to run. So you got to know the difference between a puddle and smashing it. It's an art. It takes practice, and that's what you're trying to do. Just get them just to touch each other and just smash just a hair. If you push them too much and you puddle them, and with the Tecna, you can really see it hitting the panel because you're a little closer. But this gun, not as much. It likes to be a little further away and project more. The Tecna has a bigger fan, so you have to be a little closer. And it just, I don't know how to explain it. You just have to do it, and then you'll see. But the reason I started making these videos, the reason I made the first one I made on how to spray without getting any orange peel, is because I was in, when I was younger, I was like I'd talk to painters, like, hey, how do you, do it? And the guy's like, well, you just hop in the booth and you just start spraying like hell. And then, you come out and there it is. And I'm like, well, that was helpful. It didn't teach me anything. And then I was like, I finally figured it out after just doing it so many times. And I was like, it would be helpful for other people if they could at least learn from me something to help them learn how to do it better on the first shot, and have an idea about what they're trying to do. So, yeah, it's not going to be the same. The guys in the booth, you notice they spray a little faster, because they're in a, you literally have like 3 more feet on each side in a booth, guys. In most normal booths, this is just tight. I got like 2.5 feet or something like that between me and the wall. It's just really not enough room to go fast, because what if you bump into one thing when you're spraying, like if you hit the mirror, it's over. That's a run. It's gonna happen because you're that on the edge, spraying it right up to that point where the dots are connecting, smashing just a hair, and you're watching it, flow. That's what they call flow. So, and then after you're done, the good clears like Tamco will keep flowing out for a while, and sometimes it just keeps flowing and flowing right into a run, and it kind of irritates me, but it is still a really good clear. Like in this circumstance, I wish I would have had just a little bit of the accelerator in there, because it would have flashed off a little bit faster, because I had actually fixed all of the runs. I had them all gone. They were just like down almost perfect. Went in the house for like an hour. It took that long, and then they just kept coming down. came back again. So I was like, oh man. But they were smaller still than they were. There were a little bit of runs. Really, there was like 3 or 4 little spots that were runs, and that's really not that bad on a car. You're gonna if you make those kind of mistakes on a complete, that's not bad. It's about normal. So anyway, we're on the last coat here, coming around. I think I stopped right in here somewhere to fill my pot. I don't know. I don't know where I was. Can't remember. You'll see me stop, and then I stop and check. You can hardly tell what I'm doing. I pull that lid off and look at it and see where I'm at, and I know where I'm going to run out. I think it was actually on the other side when I checked it. And then I got to the very end, and I was just short. I knew I was going to be. I'd rather be a little tiny bit short than have a whole bunch of clear mixed up that I'm going to waste. Because once it's mixed up, you got to use it or it's done. Hour, 3 hours later or whatever, it's as hard as a rock. Hardens right up in the pot. So anyway, we're getting towards the end here. I see I got this panel to do, and then I've got the other side, I think, in the same area, and then the deck lid. You notice what I did right there is I felt like I didn't quite overlap enough, so I backed up and double sprayed it, and I was right, because I would have ended up with a dry spot or a run. If it's heavy above something, that's why I always spray from the bottom up. Some guys spray from the top down, because if I have to stop on the way up, so if I'm going upward, if I'm stopping at the bottom, and this is my last little bit here, got this corner panel and then the back of it, and I'm done. Checking to see where I was at, making sure I was in the right place. That's why I touch it to make sure, see where I'm at, just gently touch it, see. But yeah, see if I wasn't sure if I had sprayed that yet. That's the thing that I do now that I didn't do when I was younger. I'd always know where I was at. Now I forget. Older, you forget more. So anyway, so the reason I stop in the bottom, I start on the bottom and I spray upward, is because let's say you run out of material, you forget where you're at, or something happens and you have to stop. If you're spraying downward or you're spraying from the top down, okay, you can spray either way. Then what happens is you stop there, and you walk away and then come back, sometimes that'll start a sag right at that point. But if you're spraying from the bottom up, it flows downward because gravity. So I always start from the bottom and go upward. That way, if I have to stop somewhere, it doesn't start a run. So that's the reason I do that. Some guys start at the top, go down. This really doesn't matter. You can do it either way. Sometimes I'll spray top down, then I'll go bottom up, but because I know I have plenty of paint in my material in my pot. Especially if the habit is that if I'm going upward and it's I'm running low, and I do happen to run out when I don't think about it, then at least I'm not going to have a run. So anyway, again, stopped. You saw me. I didn't quite overlap enough, and I thought, oh, I better spray it. Got to be exactly even all the way along to get a perfect finish. Now I'm checking my pot right there. I'm almost out. So I'm going to talk to you guys in the next video here. We're going to run out here up in the middle of this panel, and that's going to be the end of it. And hopefully with this, a couple of my other videos, you can watch those ones on just talking and showing you stuff that you can learn a little bit more about trying to spray your first car, or spraying without getting any orange peel or less orange peel. Maybe you'll do a better job at home. Again, it's not for you guys. If you guys in your shop, guys, you haven't figured it out yet, and you've been doing this stuff for, you painted 30, 50, 60 cars, guess what? You're probably not gonna. So anyway, I hope you like that. Talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let's see your comments. Keep it rolling. Have a good one. Spray some shit.